Good morning. Welcome everyone this morning, September 16th, Thursday morning. This week has gone by relatively fast. I feel like they go by faster when you have more to do, and so you have this sense of time running out. You're trying to get stuff done. But it's okay, you roll with it. Some weeks are just going to be more busy than others. And hopefully you maintain some sort of balance that doesn't become a perpetual existence, right? Where you just always feel behind, always feel overwhelmed, always have that sense. I need to reevaluate, right? Recognize our limits at that point. So welcome this morning as we consider what God has for us today, as we discuss today's topic. Mike and Joe Stromberg, welcome to you. Jan Akins, good morning. Debbie King, welcome this morning. Let's see, Deanne Fine, good morning to you. Dana Kreshock, welcome. Janisa, good morning. Welcome everyone. A little bit slower of a morning as far as numbers go. Might have just a smaller group on Thursdays. I think Thursdays are generally smaller. I don't know why. I'm curious about that. There must be something going on in the lives of the people who normally watch that either push them to later in the day watching, or Thursdays is just there's something about it. Andrea Hauser, good morning. Welcome everyone. So we have been studying Proverbs, but this morning I was not in the book of Proverbs. I was just thinking about a topic of wellness, well-being, and I thought it would really be important for us to reflect on that once in a while. There's my mom. Good morning. Steve Hauser. Good morning. Lori Agassi. Good morning to you. Welcome everybody. And so this morning we're going to talk about what some call the 5 aspects of wellness, or the 5 aspects of well-being. And I think it's important to acknowledge this what do I mean by wellness, well-being? So that we talk about emotional health a lot. Emotional health is one aspect of our entire being, of who we are. And so the reason we talk about that, have talked about that more, one is because it has been an underdeveloped part of my personal life. So as I develop it, I'm going to talk about it. And I'm in a position where I talk to people. So that's the way it is. But any aspect of our life that is underdeveloped, it's good to pay attention to it, to bring it up to a particular standard of would be considered healthy, well-being. It contributes to our overall well-being and wellness. So these are the words that we use to describe a particular aspect of our life that is healthy or less than healthy, and in some cases unhealthy. And there are 5 aspects generally. You can it depends on how you look at this. You can break it down into more, but excuse me. So you have 5 major aspects of our well-being. I really believe this is reflected in verses like Jesus, saying when he was asked, "What's the greatest commandment?" and he says, "Well, you love God above all. Love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength." This idea, this more robust idea of how we love God, heart, soul, mind, strength, really depicts a more robust description of our being, heart, mind, our intellect, soul, the emotion, of our lives, heart being our will, or it depends on how you define these terms. Our strength could be our physical body, and so on. So verses like this and others, the spirit, like our body is a temple of the Spirit, so it does matter what you do with your body. In moral ways, for sure, that's the context of, is it 1 Corinthians 6 that deals with that, or 2 Corinthians 6? It's one of the Corinthians, but it's chapter 6. There is a way that how we treat our body does have a connection to the rest of our being. So the scriptures certainly acknowledge there are many aspects to our being. And when I say the 5 aspects, these are the 5 general aspects of our who we are as a person. And they are our intellect, our emotions, our physical bodies, the social aspect of our lives, how we relate to one another, and the spiritual aspect of our lives. If we are paying attention to all 5 of these aspects, we can make sure that we are well and healthy in all of them. And this is one of the ways we use the term self-aware. Being self-aware of our consciousness, our temperament, our personality. We are conscious of these things, and how they affect how we think, how we feel about the world, how we interact with people. And so it takes some introspection. It takes some examination of different aspects of who we are. We can sometimes limit the physical to just going to the doctor. Or let them determine if we are healthy or not. But we understand that the physical part of us is our health of our bodies is multifaceted. So what I eat contributes to the health of my body. How much rest am I getting? Am I getting an adequate sleep? That contributes to the rest or the health of my body. Am I getting adequate exercise? Am I moving? Am I strengthening muscles that need to be strengthened in order to do life? There are multiple aspects of my physical well-being that contribute to what one person would call, or people generally would call, healthy. And so we look at each of those 5 aspects. Remember, there are mental aspect of us. Are we mentally growing? Our intellect. Are we learning? Are we cultivating creativity? We have creative outlets for our mind. Are we being stimulated mentally? So that that all has to do with our mental, intellectual health. Our social. How do we interact with people relationally, in our environments? And so on. We have the spiritual. Are we learning about how God loves us, how we ought to love God better, who God is, what does He expect of us, how does the world work with regard to the spiritual aspect of things? And so churches obviously really focus in on the spiritual aspect and what we're learning, because God feels about the whole person. He's not just wanting the spiritual part of our lives, but He wants all of us. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so we really do have to pay attention to everything, because it does affect our sense of well-being. And God's for all of this. And so, what are the other parts? I was going to say there's 5 of them, right? I can't remember which I've mentioned, which I haven't, but you get the idea. We examine all of our lives. Are there areas of our life that are not up to a particular standard, where we could say they're not really healthy? In some regards, maybe they're unhealthy, how we interact with one another. And so this morning I was struggling with a part of my week and my day yesterday. I needed, oftentimes in the morning, I set aside some time in the quiet hours to process some things that are happening internally, as they relate to how I'm relating to people, circumstances, things I'm looking ahead to. They all affect me. And these aspects, when we talk about these aspects of well-being, they're not parts of us, like they're standalone parts. we recognize that they interact with one another, they overlap with one another. So, like we talk about emotional health, the book we're reading right now in our 9 a.m., the argument of the author is that it is you can't expect someone to be spiritually mature while being emotionally immature, because those areas overlap too much. We can't call someone mature if they have some underdeveloped part of them, and this author is really pointing out the emotional parts of it. And you can see how, if I am emotionally unaware, or I don't have a lot of self-awareness, I'm underdeveloped in this area, it's going to affect the social part of me, right? How I interact with people. It's going to affect the physical, my body. So if I don't know how to process anger or disappointment or loss, grief, I don't know how to process that well, or even my understanding of how God loves me, in the spiritual realm. If I'm not emotionally developed, it really does affect these other areas. If like physically, I can start developing tension in my shoulders, in my neck. I can get headaches. My adrenal system can be affected because I am suppressing emotions constantly, or I don't understand why I think the way I do, why I feel the way I do, and rather than go deep in that area, I just suppress. And if you suppress something long enough, it gets repressed, and then that shows up oftentimes in physical manifestations of illness, muscle fatigue, adrenal fatigue. We get mentally depressed, emotionally depressed. So you see, if you neglect one of these 5 areas, it's going to overlap into other areas, because they're not parts; they're just aspects of our whole being. And so, just to give you an example of this, I'm speaking very generally, but at some point we got to go to very specific examples. I'm going to dive into something that is about me, that I know not everybody relates to, but I just, if you can bear with me about the process, I think you kind of get a picture of why it's so important, what the benefits are of kind of diving deep in a particular area. So I commonly say I'm conflict avoidant. That is just a part of my temperament, something I was born with. And when I say that, some people think that it's limited to conflict between people. And that's not what I mean when I say conflict avoidant. For much of my life, I have assigned a moral value to being conflict avoidant, like it's wrong. I shouldn't be. And that's not true either. That's not a realistic thing. What I'm learning as I'm becoming more self-aware, that conflict avoidance is much broader, and it's a part of my temperament. It was something I was born with, that you can see in babies, and how they are stimulated to their external environment. And so, for instance, I would say another way of saying conflict avoidant is I like to maintain peace. So yes, that affects relationships, certainly, but it also is in my entire environment. So I much prefer quiet. Especially if I'm talking to somebody, I can't have any noise in the background. If I'm studying, I can't. I really have to. It's hard for me. I'm so easily distracted with noise and so on. I'm just very prone to overstimulation. And so I'll drive for hours with Martha in the car. If we go down to Southern California to visit our girls, I don't like the radio playing. I could drive for hours without saying a word, and in complete silence. And I don't think anything of it. Martha is not that way. She would love to listen to music the whole time, talk. And so that's created some way. How do we navigate that together, in a way that's we're working together and acknowledging each other's needs and preferences and so on. But so conflict avoidance isn't just simply being in conflict with someone else, but it's finding a peaceful coexistence with all aspects of my life and environment. That's how that's my heart's happy place, right? So there's nothing wrong with it. It's not. We shouldn't assign a moral value to it. It's a part of my temperament. It's just how it is. I have no control over that being something that creates pleasure, or it's that I'm easily overstimulated by things. So what's helpful to be aware of this is also that though there's nothing wrong with that, we can take that to an unhealthy level. Let me give you two examples of this. So because I want peace with my surroundings and people and environment and whatever, I developed at a very young age this tendency to merge with my environment. What do I mean by that? I'm very aware, hyper aware of all of the aspects of a room. I enter a room, there's a bunch of people in it, they're all talking. I'm seeing who's in this room. They are here for a particular goal, they're here for a meeting, they're here in a social context, whatever it is, and I'm reading what people are saying, the topics they're talking about, and for me to find a peace in this, a peaceful coexistence, one of the ways I do it is to find an equilibrium. How do I fit into this environment in a way that maintains peace for me? And how I've done that ever since I was a little kid is to just merge with the conversations, the topics. I draw from whatever my life experience and my interests, my intellect, what I've read, whatever, to find some sort of commonality with people in an individual conversation or with the room itself, so that I fit in. And expends a lot of energy doing this. I'm introverted, so I'm expending a ton of energy. I prefer to be on the fringe rather than in the center. And that's how I navigate that. Well, what happens if you do that over time? This happened as a little kid. I was very unaware. This is how my mind worked. I was just being me. But if you do that over a period of time, this whole merging with people and so on to keep peace, you underdevelop what you actually feel, what you actually think about things. And so even as an adult, someone would say, Mark, how do you feel about this? I would have a hard time answering that question. I don't know how I feel. Good? Bad? I can't really put a lot of words to that. Mark, what is your position on this subject? Well, if I've studied it out, I do have a position. But if I feel like that my position on a particular subject is going to create tension in whatever environment I am in, I will word it in such a way to, again, find that equilibrium. So maybe somebody's telling me their position that I don't agree with at all. But rather than tell them what I think about it, I will just try to listen and ask good questions and understand. Yeah, I could see how that would be hard, or whatever. I could see your point, and I never really give my side of the issue because I'm maintaining the equilibrium. This is where I'm starting to lose myself, and I am moving into areas where people don't even know what I think about things. Right? They just see me as a nice guy. I'm friendly. I'm easy to get along with because I always find the equilibrium. Well, you can see how that could start leading to an unhealthy level where I lose myself, I lack differentiation, and so on. Well, I also happen to be on this career trajectory where I get into these leadership positions where I have to navigate and clearly direct and lead in areas of providing very clear direction and so on. I'm constantly working with individuals who are having conflict with one another, groups who are trying to achieve a goal and maybe they don't agree on how to achieve that goal, or even if they agree on the goal itself. I am constantly navigating right now we're navigating a lot of change in leadership, and so that in and of itself becomes disruptive and hard, and everybody's navigate how they feel about it. It's all good, but it has conflicting ways that we feel as we navigate it. So I'm in this leadership position now where if I'm not fully developing this part of my life, I can be a very poor leader. And so I have had to develop principally what I do think about things. I had to go deeper in my own heart. I had to navigate objective principles of leadership, objective principles of peacemaking and working through conflict and so on. So that's where I've recognized that this is a an underdeveloped part of my life, and by necessity, I had to develop it more. Let me talk about the flip side of doing all of this work. And this is I'm just telling you about one aspect. As I grow more self-aware about what I really do think, what I really do feel about things, I'm moving away from that constantly merging. I'm differentiating. These are all healthy things you're supposed to do. Now I understand that diversity in people and our interests are something that is a part of God's plan. And rather than look at it as a potential conflict that two people think differently about a particular issue, whether that was their own temperament, their own personality, their own environmental influence, their family of origin, their gender, how these influence how we see the world. Instead of seeing that as potential conflict and trying to make peace with that, we can celebrate the diversity of it. I'm telling you, in my life, as I've looked at this more in the last few years with a much deeper level, it's easier for me to move to this is a positive thing. It doesn't have to be a negative thing, and we can celebrate our diversity. That someone brings something to the table that I don't, and a perspective that I just don't have. They have temperament and personality that isn't like me. And even if I prefer something different than them, we can coexist in unity, even though our interests are in conflict. Isn't that strange? But that's true. And I'm just giving you one example. You may not identify with that in your own personality and temperament, but the point I'm making is that how we develop all aspects of our being, we can begin to benefit, not only identify underdeveloped parts of us, but we can identify how, as we grow those areas, and we can celebrate the diversity of one another. We can actually celebrate how other people view the world, and that's their unique contribution. We can identify objectively when someone else is acting in an unhealthy way. It's not just that's not how I see the world, but it's actually universally unhealthy what you're saying and how you're acting, or this is universally seen as a very healthy way to look at the world and view this relationship, even though it feels uncomfortable to me. I had a hard time differentiating between those two things in much of my life. And the more I understand it, the more I understand that, hey, there's more than one way to look at this. Some people are going to be passionate about this. I'm passionate about this. That's completely okay. The conflict between those two passions is actually a good thing, and it's something to be celebrated. It's actually, when I talk about the relationships that are closest to me, I talk about my relationship with Martha. I am able to, as I grow deeper in this area, able to celebrate her differences from me as good and healthy, and I'm able to identify areas of her life and maybe contribute to her life that was, hey, this is not healthy. Whereas before, all differences felt like conflict and it was all bad. Now I see that, hey, there are things that are unhealthy, but there are other things that are very good and healthy and beautiful. They're just different than me. And let's celebrate that. I don't have to merge with that other person to make peace. I can be different. I can differentiate. I can be me and recognize that that's good, and there's a sense of peace in that, in and of itself. So when I think about wellness, I kind of went deep on one particular issue there as it pertains to me and how I have to navigate this on my own. But you see how if we look at ourselves as a whole being with the 5 aspects of our being, can we look at any one of those 5 aspects and say, this aspect is underdeveloped? It's easy to look at one aspect where like, yes, this is me, I love it, like the physical. Maybe people are like way into exercise and they're driven by it, and nutrition and physical health, and they're like fitness instructors and trainers and dietitians, and man, this is the achievement of life, right? So it's okay to emphasize one thing, but how do we look at our whole life, and where are we underdeveloped? Where do we need to bring it up to a standard of health? It may not be the main thing we focus on, but it should at least be a healthy level. And so that's the point of today, to do some regular self-examination. Where in our 5 aspects of well-being are we really strong and where are we a little underdeveloped? And is that resulting in maybe some unhealthy influence on the other aspects of who we are? So food for thought. And I think that God wants us to understand this. So Lord bless you today as you go into the weekend. I hope that these thoughts continue with you, and we'll see you on Sunday morning. If you're here locally, we'll see you again here Monday morning at 7 as we pick back up our study in Proverbs. Lord bless you this weekend.